It's official. The whispers are true. Patrick and Eric, once the loudest voices surrounding the Whittaker family, have been completely cut off. No calls, no visits, no contact. But here's the real question everyone's asking. Why? Was it the investigation? Was it something they said? Or did the Whittakers finally have enough of being the internet's obsession? Tonight, we're breaking down the real story behind why Patrick and Eric have been banned, and what this means for the future of the Whittaker family saga. Grab your tea, because this one is about to spill over. The Whittaker story has always been a mix of mystery, compassion, and controversy. From the first time the world saw them, people were fascinated and sometimes divided about how to feel. Were they a family in need of protection, or a family being exploited for clicks and views? That question has always lingered in the background for months. The internet's been buzzing with updates: who's visiting, who's helping, who's filming. Patrick and Eric were among the most vocal people connected to this story. Patrick especially built a reputation as someone who claimed to have direct contact with the family. He was seen as the bridge between the Whittakers and the online community, the one bringing updates, photos, and sometimes even defending them against critics. Eric, on the other hand, positioned himself as the concerned outsider. He said he wanted to make sure the Whittakers were being taken care of, that everything happening to them was above board. He even claimed he reached out to Adult Protective Services, saying he spoke to officials who were supposedly handling the case. But here's where things start to fall apart. Word on the street, and now confirmed by multiple sources online, is that Patrick and Eric have both been told to step away. No more visits. No more updates. No more pretending to check in with the WAITTAKERS. At first, people thought this was just gossip. You know how the internet works, rumors spread fast. But when Patrick himself told a third party that he could no longer have contact with the family, that rumor turned into reality. And when Eric suddenly went quiet, that silence said it all. The big turning point came when people started to question motives. Let's be honest. Some of these creators, no matter how well-intentioned they claim to be, were milking the Whittaker story for views. The thumbnails, the titles, the dramatic commentary, it all started to feel less like advocacy and more like exploitation. And it seems like the people actually close to the situation, and maybe even those involved in the investigation, decided enough was enough. If you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Imagine being a family already struggling with privacy, with people constantly filming your every move. Now add outsiders showing up, posting, reacting, dissecting your life for clout. At some point, the state, the investigators, or even someone within the family was bound to say, no more. So now Patrick and Eric are on the outside looking in, and it's hitting them hard. Patrick hasn't posted anything new about the Whittakers in weeks. That's strange for someone who was once updating followers almost daily. Eric's last known comment about the family came back in early September. In that post, he claimed that the kids were safe, that they were being cared for, and that the state had taken official control. He ended it by saying there would be no further comment. That sounds final, doesn't it? But the thing is, that statement raised more questions than it answered. First, there's no proof Eric actually spoke to anyone in authority. Think about it. No agency, especially not a county or state department, is going to give out private information about a family to a random YouTuber. That would be a massive confidentiality breach. So when Eric said he spoke to someone at DHR, people were skeptical. Some called it out immediately, saying it sounded made up. And now, with him completely quiet, it looks even more suspicious. If Eric really had a contact person, if he really was in touch with officials, wouldn't he have followed up? Wouldn't he have kept his followers updated, especially after building his channel around this very story? But no, nothing, silence, and that silence speaks volumes. Meanwhile, Patrick's situation is no better. He's gone from being a source to being shut out. Whatever connection he had, it's gone. Reports say he's been told directly, through a third party, not to come around the Whittakers anymore. Now, here's where things get interesting. People are asking, who told Patrick that? Was it law enforcement? Was it someone close to the family? Was it a state official connected to the investigation? Nobody knows for sure. But what's certain is that he's following the order. For a man who's been so vocal, so eager to update everyone, to suddenly go silent, that says a lot, and that silence is the loudest update of all. There's another angle here too, something a lot of people aren't talking about. The online commentary scene around the Whittakers has become chaotic. Everyone's trying to claim a piece of the story. Some are pretending to have inside information. Others are reacting to secondhand gossip. And then there's a small group. People like Patrick and Eric, who inserted themselves directly into the family's life. It blurred the line between storytelling and interference. When Patrick and Eric started making calls, visiting, posting pictures, it stopped being just commentary and became direct involvement. That's when it got messy, and that's also when things started to backfire. If an investigation truly is underway and based on the reports, it seems there is, then any outsider trying to contact the family could make things worse, especially if that contact interferes with how the authorities are handling the situation. So maybe, just maybe, this ban isn't personal. Maybe it's protective still for followers who have been watching this unfold for months. It feels like an ending. The Whittaker story has always drawn massive attention, part curiosity, part compassion. People wanted to believe that those visiting were helping. But now, as the dust settles, it's clear that not everyone was acting with the family's best interests in mind. And that's why this ban might actually be a blessing in disguise. It's forcing everyone, Patrick, Eric, and the audience, to step back, to remember that this isn't entertainment. This is real life, real people, real trauma. Even though some will miss the updates, this pause is necessary. It's time to stop dissecting their lives and let the family heal in peace. As for Patrick and Eric, only time will tell how they handle this new chapter. Will they quietly move on to other stories? Or will they try to spin this as something else, a misunderstanding, a temporary situation, a forced break? Because let's be honest, losing access to the Whittakers means losing content. And for creators who built their platforms around this family, that's a big hit. So what happens next? Will Patrick return to YouTube with a new narrative? Will Eric resurface with more claims about his so-called contacts? Or are they both done for good? Only time will tell. Comment below. What do you think really happened? Do you believe Patrick and Eric were banned because of the investigation? Or do you think the Whittakers themselves decided to finally draw the line? Let's talk about it in the comments, because part 2 is going to dig even deeper into what may have pushed the state or the family to cut all ties for good when you spend months inserting yourself into someone's life, especially a family already under public scrutiny. Eventually, the consequences come knocking. And for Patrick and Eric, that knock finally came. The writing was on the wall long before the official ban ever hit the internet. If you look closely, you can trace the downfall back to early September, when both men were still publicly claiming to have insider knowledge about the Whittakers. At that point, they were each posting confidently, feeding their audiences with supposed updates and exclusive information. But behind the scenes, everything was shifting. Let's rewind the timeline a bit. September 2025. The beginning of the end. Around the first week of September, Eric posted that he had spoken directly with someone from DHR, the Department of Human Resources, claiming that the Whittaker children were safe and being cared for. He went on to say that the state had officially taken over and that there would be no further comment. At first glance, that message seemed reassuring. It sounded professional, measured, even official. But for anyone who's followed this story long enough, it immediately raised red flags. Why? Because Eric's credibility was already shaky. He wasn't family. He wasn't a reporter. He wasn't working with social services. He was simply a YouTube commentator who had made himself part of the story. And when you think about how strict privacy laws are, especially regarding adult protective service state, care, it becomes clear that no one from DHR would ever confirm or deny details to a stranger. So, naturally, people began asking questions. Viewers flooded the comment sections. Who did you speak to, Eric? Can you show proof? Why would the county share that with you? And when the pressure mounted, Eric didn't clarify. He didn't back up his claims. He didn't even address the criticism. He simply went quiet. That silence marked the start of the unraveling. Patrick's final updates, the calm before the cutoff while Eric faded out. Patrick continued to post. Patrick had always positioned himself as the bridge, the one with real connections, the one who knew the Whittakers personally. His content was framed around compassion, care, and bringing awareness. But even Patrick's tone began to change. People noticed it in his last few posts. Gone was the excitement of previous months. Gone were the videos of him discussing updates with confidence. Instead, his words grew vague. His voice softened, and then came the quiet admission, through a third party, that Patrick could no longer have contact with the Whittakers. That statement spread fast. It was reposted across Facebook, YouTube comment threads, and discussion forums. Some people celebrated, saying it was about time. Others expressed sadness, claiming Patrick had only ever wanted to help. But whatever your opinion is, one thing was clear. Patrick's access was gone. The ban becomes public knowledge. It didn't take long before the community pieced it together. When both Patrick and Eric stopped mentioning the family, the silence spoke louder than any official statement. Channels that usually reacted to their content began posting their own theories. Titles like Patrick cut off from the Whittakers, Eric lied about Dar, and no more updates on Timmy or Lorraine started popping up everywhere. For creators who had built entire channels around this family, this was seismic. Think about it. For months, the Whittakers had been the internet's most watched family. A unique mix of curiosity, empathy, and controversy kept people hooked. Every new video, every small detail, every rumor drew in thousands of views. But now, the main sources of that information, Patrick and Eric, were gone. It wasn't just the family that went silent. The entire conversation slowed down in that silence. It changed the tone of everything. The investigation factor now. Let's talk about the word that keeps coming up: investigation. When rumors first surfaced that Patrick and Eric were banned, one reason stood out: an ongoing investigation. If you followed this story, you know that authorities have been looking into the Whittaker family's living conditions for some time. There were questions about safety, guardianship, and whether external attention, especially from YouTubers and outsiders, had made things worse. That attention drew not just viewers, but also officials. And when investigations happen, one of the first things authorities do is limit outside contact. That means fewer visits, no unauthorized filming, and no personal updates shared online. It's all about protection, protecting the individuals involved, and preserving the integrity of the process. So, when Patrick and Eric were told to back off, it wasn't just personal. It was legal. Think about it, even if their intentions were good. Continued involvement could be seen as interference. And that's where the ban makes perfect sense. Authorities likely recognized that the more Patrick and Eric posted, the more speculation grew. Every upload, every comment, every live stream fueled public drama. And the Whittakers, a family already dealing with challenges, didn't need that noise. Public reaction, divided and emotional when the ban became known. The internet split right down the middle. Half the viewers said, "Finally, it's about time someone stepped in." They felt the Whittakers had been exploited long enough, turned into content by people chasing clicks and validation. The other half were heartbroken. They believed Patrick and Eric truly cared, that their visits brought comfort, and that they were voices of support for the family. One comment under a popular community post said it best: "It's sad because I know Patrick's heart was in the right place. But sometimes caring isn't enough. You can care and still cause harm." And that's the truth most people overlook. Sometimes helping turns into control. Sometimes concern becomes intrusion. Patrick may have loved visiting, and Eric may have thought he was advocating. But when your presence brings cameras, commentary, and conflict, it stops being about care. It becomes content. The emotional fallout behind every headline, every rumor, and every reaction video. They're still a real family. The Whittakers have lived much of their lives under the shadow of public attention. For years, their story has been told through others' voices, through documentary filmmakers, through outsiders, through online personalities. Now, for the first time in a long time, they might finally have quiet. No strangers showing up. No live streams analyzing their every move. No voices claiming to speak for them. And maybe that's exactly what they need. Even Patrick's supporters are beginning to see that. Many who once celebrated his visits are now admitting that the family deserves space. That realization is powerful and overdue. Where Patrick and Eric go from here. So what happens now? That's the question everyone's asking. Eric has gone completely silent. His social media has been quiet since his last official post in September. He hasn't uploaded, commented, or responded to messages about the situation. Patrick, while more visible, has avoided discussing the Whittakers directly. Instead, he shifted toward other commentary, likely trying to pivot his channel in a new direction. And honestly, that might be the best move he could make. Once a story like this reaches its breaking point, there's no going back. The audience might crave closure, but the people involved, the real family, need peace. Still, there's something bittersweet about watching it all fade out. For many viewers, following the Whittaker story became a routine. They tuned in weekly, they commented. They speculated. Now, with no new content and no updates. That chapter is closing. The bigger lesson, this situation, Patrick and Eric's ban, is bigger than just one family or two creators. It's a wake-up call about boundaries, ethics, and responsibility in the online commentary world. Because at some point, every creator has to ask themselves, where's the line between covering a story and exploiting it? It's one thing to talk about public figures or social issues, but when you're dealing with vulnerable families, people who can't fully consent to being filmed or discussed, that line gets blurry. Patrick and Eric crossed that line, maybe without realizing it. They stepped from storytellers into participants. And when you become part of the story, you also become part of the problem, the calm after the storm now. Weeks after the ban, the online world feels different. There are no new photos, no surprise updates, no breaking news thumbnails. A constant noise has faded into silence, and maybe that's the real peace this family needed all along. The cameras are gone, the visits have stopped, and in their place, a long overdue stillness for Patrick and Eric. This is the end of an era. For the Whittakers, it's the start of healing. Comment below. Do you think Patrick and Eric's removal was fair? Were they genuinely trying to help, or did they go too far by inserting themselves into the family's life? Your thoughts matter, because in part 3, we're going to break down how public obsession with the Whittakers spiraled out of control, and how internet fame turned a family's reality into a global spectacle. Every story that goes viral has a heartbeat. A moment where curiosity turns into obsession for the Whittaker family. That moment came the very first time the world laid eyes on them. A simple video, raw, emotional, human, turned into a viral phenomenon. What started as awareness quickly morphed into fascination, and from there into something darker. The Whittakers were no longer just a family living their lives. They became characters in a story the internet refused to stop telling, and like every viral story, people wanted more. More updates, more visits, more videos, more emotion. Enter Patrick. Enter Eric. Two men who saw themselves as the family's protectors or perhaps the narrators of their story. But when you add cameras, commentary, and clout to the equation, good intentions can easily turn into exploitation. And that's exactly what happened. The rise of the Whittaker world. It started innocently. Patrick's videos and social posts about the family gained traction fast. People saw him as the friendly face, the one who could bring them closer to the Whittakers without intruding. His tone was calm, kind, and emotional. Viewers trusted him. They believed his updates were genuine. Then, as his audience grew, The line between documenting and dramatizing started to blur. Patrick's commentary became part of the entertainment. His every visit became an event. His every video, a must-see update. The more he posted, the more people wanted. It wasn't long before entire communities formed around the Whittaker story. Facebook groups, YouTube comment threads, reaction videos, and fan discussions. Some people genuinely cared. Others were simply entertained. But as the audience grew, so did the pressure to keep the content flowing, and that's when things began to shift. When compassion became content. What makes this story complicated is that Patrick and Eric didn't start out as villains. They started as observers, commentators, people who wanted to help. Eric, for example, presented himself as a truth seeker, the one who wanted accountability. Patrick was the heart, the one who said he cared deeply about the family's well-being, but over time, both of them fell into the same trap, the attention trap. Every post about the Whittakers brought in thousands of views. Every rumor generated discussions. Every comment section filled with theories, arguments, and emotional reactions. The algorithm rewarded it, and in the world of social media, attention is addictive. Soon, what started as awareness turned into a cycle of content, one that didn't just document the family story, but began to control it. You could see it in the way thumbnails got more dramatic. Titles got bolder. Phrases like breaking update or the truth about the Whittakers appeared again and again. It wasn't just storytelling anymore. It was storytelling for profit, and somewhere in all that noise, the humanity got lost. The power and the problem of parasocial relationships. If you've ever followed a YouTuber, streamer, or influencer closely, you know what a parasocial relationship feels like. That one-sided connection where you feel like you know them, even though you've never met. That's what happened with the Whittakers. Millions of people across the internet felt a personal connection to them. They cried when the family cried. They celebrated small victories. They argued in comment sections as if they were defending close friends, but here's the harsh truth. The Whittakers never asked for that relationship. They never consented to being turned into global icons or emotional mascots for online empathy. And that's where things went too far. When viewers start to feel ownership over someone else's life, especially a vulnerable family, it opens the door to chaos. Every creator who made content about the Whittakers contributed to that feeling of ownership, whether they meant to or not. Patrick and Eric were the loudest voices in that crowd. They built their followings on that emotional connection, but the moment they began to act like gatekeepers of the family's story, the situation spiraled. They weren't just reporting on the Whittakers anymore. They were representing them, speaking for them, making decisions about them, and that's when the boundaries disappeared completely. The online circus. By mid-2025, the Whittaker conversation had become a circus. Dozens of reaction channels emerged, each offering their own take on what was really happening. Some creators were sympathetic. Others were harsh, even cruel. Conspiracy theories spread fast, people speculating about who was controlling what, whether the family was safe, or if outsiders were manipulating the narrative. Videos with emotional titles like Save the Whittakers or They're Being Used flooded YouTube. And every time Patrick or Eric posted, the chaos reignited. It reached a point where people were analyzing body language, tone, and facial expressions as if they were solving a mystery instead of talking about real people. It was entertainment disguised as empathy. And the saddest part, the family became invisible in their own story. When the family disappeared, as the internet argued and speculated, the Whittakers themselves grew quieter. Less footage appeared. Fewer authentic updates surfaced. And soon, the only people still talking were outsiders. Patrick and Eric became the self-appointed narrators of silence. They filled the gaps with assumptions, vague statements like, "They're fine. I heard from someone," or "Trust me, they're okay." But people were starting to see through it. Their audiences wanted proof, real proof, and when neither could provide it, their credibility began to crumble. That's when frustration turned to backlash. Comments began appearing like, "Stop speaking for them. If they want privacy, let them have it. This isn't your story to tell. And just like that, the tide began to turn. When the internet finally said enough by late September, public sentiment shifted. For months, people had felt uneasy. The emotional tone of the Whittaker coverage no longer felt pure. It felt heavy, manipulative, tired. Even longtime supporters of Patrick and Eric started saying what many had thought for a while. It was time to let go, and that's exactly what happened. Patrick was told to step away. Eric went silent, and the community began to breathe again. Some fans expressed sadness, others relief. But overall, there was a sense that the constant noise had finally stopped. The obsession that once consumed the internet was finally breaking apart. The cost of turning real lives into online stories. The biggest tragedy in all of this is that the Whittakers' humanity got overshadowed by the content machine built around them. When millions of people watch your every move, you stop being a person, you become a story, and when that story is told through outsiders with their own motives, it stops being truth. Patrick and Eric, despite their differences, both made the same mistake. They turned empathy into a brand, even if their hearts were in the right place. Their methods weren't. When you turn someone's pain into your platform, even the smallest misstep feels like betrayal, and that's the line they crossed. Maybe not intentionally, but undeniably. The truth is, once the cameras turn on, the power dynamic shifts. No matter how genuine your intentions are, you become the one in control. You hold the mic, you hold the edit. You decide what the world sees. And that power, unchecked, can destroy even the most sincere purpose. What happens when the story ends now, with Patrick and Eric both cut off? The Whittaker narrative is fading into quiet. The constant commentary has ended. The algorithms have moved on, but the question remains, what happens when the story ends? What happens to the creators who built their channels on someone else's life? And what happens to the audience who spent months emotionally invested in people they've never met? Some will move on. Some will stay stuck in speculation. And a few, the ones who truly cared, will keep hoping for updates that may never come. But maybe that's the best possible ending. Because silence, in this case, isn't abandonment. It's respect. The Whittakers don't need more videos, more visitors, or more defenders. They need peace. They need normalcy. They need privacy. And if this ban brings that, then maybe, finally, it was all worth it. A final reflection. The internet has a short memory. Viral stories come and go every day. But the impact they leave behind, especially on real people, can last forever. Patrick and Eric will likely be remembered as cautionary tales, people who cared deeply, but lost themselves in the echo chamber of internet validation. And the Whittakers? They'll always be remembered as the family that made the world feel something real, even if that feeling came with controversy. But if there's one takeaway from this entire saga, it's this: empathy without boundaries isn't kindness. It's chaos. Comment below. Do you think the internet was too obsessed with the Whittakers? Did creators like Patrick and Eric help bring awareness, or did they cross the line by turning this into entertainment? In Part 4, we'll explore the aftermath, how Patrick and Eric's reputations have changed, how the audience has responded, and what the future holds for the online community that once couldn't look away. Every story has an ending. And for the Whittaker family saga, and for Patrick and Eric, that ending has finally arrived. The lights have dimmed, the channels have gone quiet, and the people who once spoke the loudest about the Whittakers are now facing the silence they helped create. It's poetic. In a way, for months, they filled the internet with noise, commentary, theories, and emotional pleas. Now that noise is gone, and in its place, reflection, regret, and reality. Patrick. After the ban, when Patrick first learned he could no longer contact the Whittakers, it must have felt like a gut punch. For someone who built his online identity around compassion for the family, being told to step away likely felt like rejection or even betrayal. After all, Patrick wasn't a casual commenter. He was deeply involved. He saw himself as a friend, a helper, a voice for the voiceless. But what he may not have realized is that sometimes the greatest act of care is stepping back. In the weeks since the ban, Patrick's online presence has shifted noticeably. Gone are the emotional updates, the posts filled with speculation or secondhand information. Instead, his focus has turned toward other families, other stories, and general social commentary. It's clear he's trying to pivot, to find purpose beyond the Whittakers, but there's also a weariness in his tone now. A hesitance that wasn't there before. It's the voice of someone who's been burned by the very spotlight he helped create. Some of his followers still support him wholeheartedly, writing comments like, "Patrick, you did what you could. You have a good heart. Don't let this stop you. Keep doing good things." But others haven't been so forgiving. "You made this family into content. You should have stopped a long time ago." It's a split that perfectly reflects the moral tension at the heart of this entire story. Can someone have good intentions and still cause harm? In Patrick's case, the answer might be yes. Eric's vanishing act. Then there's Eric. While Patrick tried to stay visible, Eric did the opposite. After his final statement in early September, where he claimed to have spoken to someone at DHR, Eric vanished from the conversation entirely. No new videos, no comments, no posts addressing the situation. His silence has sparked endless theories. Some say he was embarrassed after being called out for fabricating information. Others think he stepped away out of respect once he realized the situation had gotten too messy. But the most likely explanation? He was forced to, if the investigation into the Whittaker's situation is truly ongoing. Eric's continued public commentary could have caused legal trouble, or at the very least, more unwanted attention from authorities. So he disappeared. In a way, that silence might be the smartest thing he's ever done, but the internet never forgets. His reputation now carries a stain, not necessarily because of what he said, but because of what he represented. A man who inserted himself into someone else's story, claimed authority he didn't have, and then walked away when it collapsed, the audience reckoning the biggest shift. Though, hasn't come from Patrick or Eric. It's come from the audience. For months, people tuned in religiously for updates. Every video, every rumor, every comment section was alive with emotion, sadness, anger, fascination, even love. Now, that same audience is left with a kind of emotional hangover. When the story first broke that both men were banned, comment sections across multiple platforms filled with confusion and reflection. "I can't believe it's really over. Maybe this is for the best. I just hope the Whittakers are okay." Slowly, the conversation turned inward. People started asking themselves the hard questions. Why were we so obsessed? Why did we need constant updates about this family's private life? And why did we let two strangers, Patrick and Eric, become the moral authorities of a situation none of us truly understood? That's the reckoning taking place right now, because when you strip away the drama, the views, and the virality, what remains is something uncomfortable. Millions of people emotionally invested in a story that was never theirs to own, the collapse of a content cycle. If you look at Patrick's and Eric's channels today, you'll see it clearly. The numbers are dropping, fewer views, fewer comments. Less engagement. And that's not because people stopped caring about them personally. It's because their viewers were there for the Whittakers. That's the cruel truth about content built on other people's lives. Once the source dries up, so does the attention. The moment they lost access to the family, they also lost the narrative that kept their audiences glued to the screen. That's not to say either of them didn't care. Patrick clearly did. Eric may have too in his own way. But in the online ecosystem, emotion isn't what drives traffic, drama does, and when the drama ends, so does the fame. For Patrick and Eric, this ban wasn't just a personal loss, it was a professional one. The Whittakers' silence, and what it means meanwhile. The Whittakers themselves remain silent. No new appearances. No statements. No footage. And honestly, that's how it should be. Their silence isn't suspicious, it's sacred. After months of being pulled, filmed, and discussed, the family has finally been allowed to breathe. They've earned that peace. Some viewers still hope for a return, Not because they crave drama, but because they genuinely care. They want to see Timmy smile again. They want to know Lorraine and Ray are okay. They want reassurance, but the truth is that reassurance isn't owed to anyone. The Whittakers don't have to prove they're okay. They don't have to perform recovery for the world. They don't owe the internet closure. Their silence is their statement. We're done being your story, the lesson nobody wanted to learn there. A powerful lesson buried in all of this, one that extends beyond the Whittakers. Patrick or Eric. It's a lesson about boundaries, humanity, and the danger of digital empathy, because here's the truth, the internet loves to care. But too often, that care comes with strings attached. People say they want to help, but what they really want is access. People say they want to support, but what they really crave is a front row seat to the struggle. That's what happened here. Patrick and Eric's platforms thrived on the illusion of caring. Their audiences believed that by watching, by commenting, by liking, they were somehow part of something good. But caring isn't consumption. And empathy isn't entertainment. That's the uncomfortable truth this story forced everyone to face. What's next for Patrick and Eric? As for the two men at the center of it all, their futures are uncertain. Patrick will likely rebuild. He seems determined to stay on YouTube, maybe shifting toward new topics, other families, other social discussions. If he's wise, he'll take the lessons from this saga and apply them moving forward, approaching his commentary with more caution, less involvement, and deeper respect for privacy. Eric's path, however, is unclear unless he resurfaces with a completely new direction. His credibility within this niche is gone. The trust he once had, the image of the concerned advocate, has crumbled. It's possible he'll fade away quietly. It's also possible he'll rebrand and return, but no matter what either man does next, this story will follow them, because once you make yourself part of someone else's life and then get removed from it, that shadow never really leaves. The internet moves on, and as it always does, the internet is already moving on. New viral stories. New creators. New obsessions. The cycle continues. But the Whittaker saga will always stand out, not just because of who they were, but because of what they represented. The fine line between compassion and intrusion. It's a story that forced creators and viewers alike to confront their own motives. To ask, why do we watch? Why do we care? And most importantly, at what cost? The final word, maybe this is how it was always supposed to end. Quietly. No explosive finale. No final video. No teary goodbye. Live streams. Just silence. A silence that, for once, isn't tragic, but peaceful. The Whittakers are no longer being spoken for. Patrick and Eric have both been silenced, by choice, by order, or by consequence. And the audience, whether they realize it or not, has been set free too, free from the endless debates, free from the emotional roller coaster, free to remember that not every story belongs online, because the truth always comes out, but not every truth needs to be told. Comment below. Do you think Patrick and Eric deserve forgiveness? Was their involvement more harmful or helpful in the long run? And what do you think the internet should learn from the Whittaker story? This has been the final part of Patrick and Eric, banned from the Whittaker family. The truth comes out. Thank you for watching, for thinking, and for remembering that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is stop talking and just let people live. Thank you for watching this video. Click here to watch another video that might interest you.